There we are, and we're live. I'd like to welcome you all. This is very much an experiment for us. In Swedenborg Community Victoria in the past, on last Friday of each month, we've had a discussion meeting. We've had a variety of speakers covering all sorts of topics. In the last 5 years, of course, in COVID times and post-COVID, we've done more and more live streaming, and it's allowed us actually to have a lot of international and national speakers come in with relatively little effort. What I'm doing this year, and tonight's our experiment very much, is focusing on some of the Swedenborgian YouTube channels and other social media channels that are around, just to give you a sense of what's available if you're interested in the Swedenborg space. And my guinea pig for tonight is Howard. I'm very pleased to have Howard Thompson here from the Roseville New Church in Sydney. He also runs a YouTube channel called Spiritual Shorts, and it's a good opportunity just to talk with Howard about his journey, his channel, everything that he's doing. And he's brought a topic as well to talk to us about. So welcome, Howard. Lovely to have you with us. And I'll say, anybody watching on YouTube or Facebook, you will have opportunity to write any questions to Howard in the chat. And if you want to do that, I can present those to Howard later on in the meeting when we have opportunity to chat with him. And then we also have a member of the general public in our live studio audience here tonight. So Neville's going to have front row seats for asking Howard questions. So that's the plan for the night. And Howard, I'd just like to say welcome. Lovely to have you here with us. And I hope you enjoy, our hour or so together. And I'm looking forward to the chat, certainly.
Thank you, David. I'm sure I'll enjoy it. I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. So look, to kick off, I'd like to sort of talk about Howard the person, who you are, what you do, what your interests are. Do you want to tell us a bit about you?
Okay. Well, I guess I'll move backwards. I've been in ministry for about 15 years. The first half of that, the second half of that, I've been serving here in Sydney, Roseville in particular, about a half hour north of Sydney. And then for the first half of that, I was serving in Colchester, about an hour northeast of London. For anybody listening who doesn't know me, you probably noticed that I have neither an English nor an Australian accent.
Funny that.
And that's largely because ministry is my second career. I was born and raised outside of Philadelphia on the East Coast of the United States. I raised my own family there before entering ministry. And I spent about 20 years in insurance and risk management as my first career. Maybe, David, you'll have me back and I can give a fascinating talk on the parallels between the risk management process and repentance.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, we'll put you down for that already.
My journey, everybody's journey is unique, and my journey is unique. Unlike a lot of people in the new church or in the Swedenborgian world, I found Swedenborg. I wasn't raised in it. I had no background in it. I don't think I even heard the name Swedenborg before my 30th birthday.
Okay. So how did you come to find out about Swedenborg?
Well, let's see. Before I get to that, I'll say that I was raised with faith. I was raised in an Anglican tradition. And my wife and I were married in the Anglican Church. We attended an Anglican church regularly as a young couple. I think we recognize, not to be disparaging towards any of our four parents. Yeah, I don't know that we had the best, or we recognize that in some respects, we didn't have the best marriage role models, and that we would need some
Mm.
help.
Okay.
And I think we intuitively knew that a marriage is not a two-legged stool. It's a three-legged stool. It's a husband, a
Mm.
wife, and the Lord. So we sought out a faith community and found an Anglican church that was a really nice fit for us.
Okay.
In fact, our first daughter was our first child, our only daughter. She was even baptized initially in the Anglican Church, and we had her going there with us, obviously regularly when she was very young. But like happens, we bought a house in a new area. We weren't raised in the new church, so we weren't used to driving 1 hour to get to a church.
Yeah. Okay.
And we started visiting other churches in the new area we were living, and we never really committed to one, but we attended a number of them over a course of a couple of years. But this is sort of where things get very interesting. And I'm gonna stop talking about the direct path that our family took to the new church, and I'm going to tell a little bit of the story. In fact, it's the first time that I've told this story publicly. It's a YouTube exclusive.
Look at that.
That'll drive the audience. But first, a little background is necessary, I think. I won't go into too many of the details, but I will say this. When I was 17 years old, my older brother, Eddie, 24, was married, and he took his own life.
That would have been hard.
I was understandably devastated. He was my older brother. He was my hero. And I grieved. I struggled. But life went on. I graduated from high school. I went to university. I married my college sweetheart, and we had our first child. So that brings up kind of the backstory behind where we were. But round about 10 years after he passed, I think it was about 10 years, and it was about the time, or maybe just before the time, our first child was born. I began having a series of very vivid dreams.
Okay.
And I will note, again, at this point, I haven't even heard the name Swedenborg. I got no idea about this stuff or what he's written. And that first dream was, I was at an event. It was a family event, but sort of like a family event, but there were also people who weren't in the family there. And across the room, I saw Eddie.
Oh, okay.
And I was a little surprised because I didn't think he was around anymore. So I, went across the room to greet him. But shortly after greeting him and, giving him a hug, I'm like, hey, how are you here? I thought you died. And boom, the dream ended.
Oh, okay.
I remember the dream. We don't remember most of our dreams. I woke up remembering that dream.
So I can ask you, how did you wake up at the point of the end of the dream at that point, or you don't know whether you didn't wake up?
I didn't wake up at that moment, and I don't know. I do wear a watch that tells me how I slept, so I can tell you that most of my REM sleep is late in the night, like early in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's very possible I woke up shortly after it, but it didn't wake me. Let's say that. Um, so, I remembered it. I didn't try to analyze the dream. I just kind of kept it there and
Mm.
reflected on it. A number of months passed, maybe 2 or 3 months, and I had another dream. And it was very similar circumstances. Only this time I stayed away from Eddie and I sought out my sister. My sister and my
Okay.
brother were closer in age than I was to either of them.
Mm.
Um, and I pointed out to her, I said, you see Eddie across the room, right? She said, yeah, Eddie's here. And he can't possibly be here. He died. We went to his funeral and dream ended.
Okay.
And again, I'm like, wow, that was really weird. That was really weird. So woke up from that and a number of months passed and I had that dream again. But this time I'd learned my lesson.
Okay.
Talk less, listen more.
All right. Okay.
I still approached Eddie. I greeted him, but I didn't mention his passing.
Yeah. Okay.
I just listened to him, sussed out what he's been up to, how things are going. And
Mm.
from him, I came to understand that his struggles, the demons he had wrestled with in this
Mm.
life,
Mm.
had all been resolved.
Okay. So he was in a place of peace.
Yep. He had
Yeah.
received the help that he needed in
Mm.
the next life and was
Yeah.
doing fine.
Okay.
5 years later, and I, interestingly enough, haven't had any dreams. I shouldn't say that. I do occasionally see him in a dream, but
Okay.
it's not as profound as that.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad experience. And I don't
Mm.
wake up disturbed or anything.
Yeah.
Um, a num- so years went by, 3, maybe 5 years, and uh, Deborah and I were interested in checking out other churches now, and we went to the New Church
Okay.
in Bernathen.
Yeah.
Again, not. I mean, it looks like a church. We didn't
Mm.
understand any distinction, and it was as Anglicans, the Bernathen Cathedral makes you feel right at home.
Oh, I could well imagine. Yeah, the pictures that I've seen, for sure. Yes.
It really does. But we of course noticed that there's some different things about this church.
Mm.
And we started asking some questions, and somebody enrolls us in newcomer classes, and we
Mm.
got attend a couple of newcomer classes, um, and I decided to read a book, and talking to a few people, well, which book should I first read? And the one that sounded the most interesting to me was Heaven and Hell.
Okay. No, so
Um,
I'm interested to ask you, actually, was Heaven and Hell kind of pushed on you, or you thought that's the best book for me? Because
um,
Heaven and
it
Hell is one of those, it's the most popular book. It's the one I think everybody seems to start with almost.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was pushed on me. In fact, when I push a book on somebody, it's NJHD,
Yeah. Okay.
New Jerusalem and Heavenly Doctrine, just because I think it's so nice and concise.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think those two were actually suggested,
Yeah.
and Heaven and Hell, just the title got my attention, probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was reading that, and I get to the part where Swedenborg starts describing the process that a person goes through the world of spirits, the 3-stage process.
Yeah. Okay.
And I read that, and I'm like, yeah, I know.
Okay.
because that's exactly what was shared with me by my brother after this life.
Yeah, in your dream. Okay.
In my dream.
Mm.
I was hooked. I mean, I think I probably became a Swedenborgian from that moment.
Mm. So how long was that from first walking into a church to saying, right, this is for me. This is where I want to go, where I want to be.
Within 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And
We had
then were you fairly
sorry.
quickly
There's some there.
on the ordination track, or did it
No,
take
no,
a
no,
while before that? No?
no, no, no. There's somewhat of a not complicating, but another factor there, and that is that we were considering enrolling our child in kindy at the church-run school.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and I do have to also note that our awareness of the existence of the school came from the fact that they were an insurance and risk management customer of mine.
Okay. That always helps.
Yeah.
There goes.
But they hadn't, when I had that whole series of dreams about my brother, they hadn't been.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about them. So, we enrolled her in the school. Those newcomer classes were, a requirement. They basically asked us to attend some classes. Deborah and I are still convinced that Jeremy Simmons continued to have to make up new classes because most people stopped coming after the first 2 or 3, but we kept coming.
Okay.
But then it was about 2 years into it. It was having a very profound impact on both of us. And I voiced a desire to Deborah to be baptized, and mentioned that I was going to have a sit down with Jeremy Simmons, and she said, "Well, you can't do that because I wanted to talk to Jeremy Simmons about getting baptized."
Okay. So you
So
both did it together?
we did it together, and we had Chelsea baptized, and technically Ben was baptized because I think Deborah was pregnant at that point with Ben.
Okay. By proxy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was. I mean, it was a really profound
Mm.
movement, a leap
Mm.
in my spiritual journey, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that would have been in 1998, roughly.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe just before 2000.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until 2006 or 7 that I started to think about answering the call.
Mm.
And then resigned from the insurance business in 2008 and went to theological school.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So can I ask you, Howard?
Yeah.
You've got a very particular reason for being part of the new church, being interested in Swedenborg. Were there any ideas that you struggled with, and that you've had to sort of come to terms with and get your head around?
No.
Okay.
I mean, for me, the resolution, the Swedenborgian resolution of the Trinity is just so much easier to take in.
Okay.
So much easier.
And had that been sitting there? I mean, while you're spending time in an Anglican church, has that been sitting there and worrying you, or you just been able to put it to one side, or how had you dealt with it?
It didn't worry me because I only ever really saw faith as a help in being the best servant of the Lord possible.
Okay.
I never I mean, I would say I have a pretty clear recollection that, reciting the Athanasian Creed, was that that's the Anglicans use that.
Yeah.
Reciting that, saying, "Yeah, I'm saying the words, but I still don't quite get that whole three persons thing."
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, it's I so so there wasn't, but at the age, recognize that I was, you know, early 30s when I finally came to it. So most of my time was as a child, a teenager, in my 20s. I didn't really wrestle with matters of faith a lot.
Mm, mm, yeah.
Um,
Okay.
but back to that experience of my own dreams, the momentary lucid dream that I had, um, just knowing or being able to have such a descriptive explanation of what we go through from a process standpoint just
Mm,
makes so much more sense.
yeah.
The presentation of heaven and hell as not reward and punishment, but as mercy.
Mm, mm,
It's
mm.
just it's wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah. Fabulous. Look, I want to fast forward now.
yeah,
So you've served in ministry, in the UK and in Australia. So you're serving
yeah.
in Roseville in north of Sydney, um, and the YouTube journey sort of
Yeah.
really thrusts itself on you, I think, doesn't it? Same as it did for us too.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about YouTube and your relationship with that and how that's developed?
Sure. I, uh, David, you know this well. I consider myself a reluctant YouTuber.
Yeah.
Maybe my next channel will be called The Reluctant YouTuber. Um, but despite that, I run a channel called Spiritual Shorts. It started, well, I would say that for several years before I started the channel, this would be late 20 teens, I'd had a number of colleagues that said, "Hey, you should get on YouTube. You should stream your services," which I still don't do, by the way. Um, you should give talks. You should do this. You should do that. YouTube's the wave of the future. All that stuff. It's the way to reach people. And I'm like, no, 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 no. That's not worship. That's not worship. Worship is gathering together with other people and in communion and to worship the Lord. And I think there's huge power in that. Um, I love that. I mean, even
Mm, yes.
if I was not obligated by my role here as a pastor, I would still go to church every Sunday.
Mm,
Maybe 3 out of 4.
yeah.
Um, I love the sacred space.
Mm,
Um, I love to get on my knees in the
mm,
presence of others. I like to be with a group of people that recognize that something is more important than we are, as
mm,
individuals and as a group. Um, but like so many other churches, we wound up in lockdown in early 2020,
mm,
and I had to very quickly create a YouTube channel and start to put out material on a weekly basis for people to have to support basically what I saw as home worship. Um,
yes.
it As soon as the lockdowns were over, I didn't stop it. Um, I became aware that a lot of the people who were watching weren't our regular attenders. I mean, our regular attenders were watching,
Mm,
but a lot of the people were people who had an association with the church but had retired away.
mm.
Now they were nowhere near a new church, and
Yeah,
they
living
still
at a
wanted to stay in
distance.
touch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I do often say that my biggest reason for resisting starting a channel was I didn't want my sister to be the only person watching.
I was going to remind you of that one. I'm glad you did it instead of me,
Yeah.
because of
And
course you're not. that's not true anymore. We know that quite
Uh,
spectacularly, really, don't we?
it's not true anymore. And I love my sister, but I get to talk to my sister enough. Um, um, and then but I really just did that same thing for 4 years. Yeah, for
Yeah.
about
Okay.
4 years.
Yeah.
It underwent some changes because initially what I did was I took every element of a service because it was intended to support home worship when
Mm.
people couldn't come to church. I did every bit of a service. I
Yeah.
included hymns. Now they were recorded hymns from other people, but I included hymns. I included the opening of the word.
Mm.
I knelt down and said the Lord's Prayer. I did lessons. I gave a talk.
Mm.
So it wasn't the 50 minutes or an hour long service that we have on the typical Sunday, but it was
Yeah.
15 or 20 minutes, and it had every element of worship.
Yeah. And then, so
Um,
just to say, so when you talk about including hymns, you were including links, weren't you, to videos of hymns elsewhere? You weren't
yeah,
including them in the video itself. So if someone's going through it like a service of worship, that extends the amount of time.
yeah,
You're giving
yeah,
them the meat of the address, maybe the reading, but if you include hymns and such, it
that's
is
right.
more like a full service. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
But you're doing it on your own, and that's
yeah,
at
yeah,
home. Yeah.
yeah. And kudos to the YouTube community. Uh, so many people produce such wonderful things
Mm,
from a spiritual music perspective during lockdowns. It was
mm,
just, the creativity was all inspiring. But oh
yeah.
well. So, but after lockdowns were over, I made one effort to modify it a little bit. I tried to shorten it down, take some of the ritual out of it. And then I got a couple of comments from people that said, but I like seeing you pray. So I kept that in it for quite some time. And then finally, I, I guess a year and a half ago, maybe I got down to just delivering a 5 to 7 minute summary of my sermon.
Mm,
I mean, the word's still there, the word's open, the candle's lit, but I'm not going through any of the ritual. Um, uh, and then I, a number of my colleagues got a little more persistent. One guy down at the Swedenborg community in Victoria was getting persistent. Um, a, a guy at Hurstville, Todd, was
mm,
getting persistent. You could really do more. You really should be doing more. And then I got into a conversation with the king of all Swedenborgian YouTubers, and that's Curtis Childs. And he really encouraged me.
yeah.
He
Okay.
said, I think you got a great presence, you got a great way about you, and you're delivering good stuff. I think you could do more. So we talked at length over the course of a couple of months. I put together a plan of how I was going to revise it, and as of September 1st, I went from that weekly 5 to 7 minute message
Mm,
to I now produce 5 videos a week. Um, well, I put out 5 videos a week. Two of them are 3 to 7 minutes long. One of them is a 1 minute short, brief thing about a topic of spiritual nature. And
mm.
then two others are clips from the longer videos that I put out there as a kind of a preview. Um, hey there, Stockholm. Wow.
Yeah. Someone's
I've
watching
got
from
it.
the other side of the world.
I do have a few friends in Stockholm, so I'm assuming that's one of them. I hope it is. Um, and then let's see. So where was and now, in addition to those 5 videos a week spread out during the week, I now also get to put a post up. If you have more than 500 subscribers, you're allowed to post things other than videos. So
Yeah.
now I put up a Monday meditation. Usually it's a passage from scripture and then a little bit of a thought
Mm,
about that. And it was really amazing that my channel on September 1st, my channel had 91 subscribers. And now I'm very close to 1,500, which is
Yeah.
great. Absolutely great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and the really spectacular growth has really been in the last month and a half, hasn't it? Because you've gone from 500-ish.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The really spectacular stuff happened. Yeah. Yeah. I can.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah. It's been pretty steady. It's actually kind of leveled off a little bit now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've got a couple of things coming up in the next month that I'm probably going to promote, spend a couple of dollars, and if they catch people's attention, it'll add a number more. Who knows what that number is going to be? But
Yeah.
there's no there's a lot of great stuff on the internet, and there's a lot of really unpleasant stuff on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
indeed.
I'm just trying to add more positive stuff, meaningful spiritual content that can bring light to people's spiritual lives, and make them feel better about the nature of the Lord, the nature of his operation in our world, and his desire for each of us.
Yeah. So. I think that's really important because, I know as a YouTuber, you can watch videos and it's all about working with the algorithm and getting the algorithm to do its job to bring you more people. But, what I've learned from watching one in particular, in the last week or so was really it's about focusing on your core business. What is it you are about? And you can get lost in the number of subscribers thing. And at that point, I think you're going to run into trouble. I think you just need to focus on what am I here to do? What is my purpose? Why did I start this thing? Just focus on that.
Yep. Yeah, I think I've got enough. I mean, I do hope it continues to grow. That said, I do have enough that I'm in touch with enough of my subscribers, and enough of them comment on the things that I put up that I feel like I'm continuing to feed people beyond the ability to feed people in a local church.
Yeah.
With most churches declining attendance.
Yeah. And I'd agree with that. I think, for me, it's that life in the comments. It's, chatting to people after a video has been published and talking around the issues that it raises. That for me is, I've found really worthwhile. Can I just check you out on other platforms? So you're not just on YouTube, you publishing anywhere else?
I do. I put my shorts. It is kind of funny that my channel is called Spiritual Shorts, and none of my videos ever were qualified as shorts.
Until recently.
So I'll release all of my reels and my shorts on Instagram and on Facebook.
Okay.
But I do both of those under the Roseville New Church. I guess technically Spiritual Shorts is my channel. But I put it out there, other than YouTube, I put it out there on the church Facebook pages. I'm still kind of wrestling with what do I do? Do I create? I actually have created, there's not much there other than a banner. I have created a Spiritual Shorts Facebook page.
Okay.
And I'll probably start a Spiritual Shorts Instagram, because if I'm putting out, the weekly Monday meditation and the reels already on Instagram, how much harder is it to say, oh, well, okay, put it on Roseville New Church and put it on Spiritual Shorts? That won't be that difficult, but that's just a technical matter of me taking the time to set it up. And
we have a lovely comment here just to share with you at the moment. I love the short clips you do, because I think it's a way to draw people in. I send them to my friends and they seem to appreciate the shorter messages. So Thank you for that comment. I think that comes from Stockholm again. It's lovely.
Thank you very much for that comment. And that means I'm hitting my target.
Yeah.
I don't, you know, I don't envision, but I might at some point do more interview kind of things like this on my own channel. I don't
Yeah.
know. But my format is, you know, I called it spiritual shorts for the double entendre.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Bite-sized
So
pieces.
look, Howard,
Yeah.
you came this evening with the topic of worthiness. So I thought I'd hand over to you to have a bit of a chat on that one. I will just say to those people who are watching, and we've got a few folk watching online, if you do have a question for Howard, do put it in the chat and I can share it with him later on. But I'm going to give you a chance to sort of take over the reins, mate, and say, tell us what you want to tell us about worthiness.
Okay, I will do that. I will make one note on the chat for anybody that is writing in the chat. I have that blocked so that I can't see it just because I find it very distracting.
That's
And
fine. I'll make sure I keep an eye on it. So,
and it doesn't mean that I don't appreciate that people want to engage with us, but I can't. My wife will tell you I cannot do two things at once.
I'll tell you I can't do two things at once either, but I'm about to try.
So worthiness. So I noted that I had served the New Church in the UK for a number of years. And part of the responsibility of doing that was that every other year, and actually as it turned out, it was more years than not, I was responsible for running the British Academy Summer School, also known as BASS. It's a summer school that brought together young people anywhere from 15 years old to 20 from Europe, the US, and Canada. And they bring them together for 2 weeks in the British Midlands, up near Birmingham. And so I was headmaster. Sounds very impressive, but it basically meant all I had to do was put together a teaching schedule and recruit the teachers. And in that role, I also taught. And one of my favorite classes to teach was a class about the Holy Supper. Unlike a lot of Christian faiths, the New Church doesn't really have specific rules or traditions around a person's first Holy Supper. Swedenborg seems to suggest that you should be tying the communion, Holy Supper to the age of rationality, which he marks somewhere in the area of 20 years. And I always liked and taught that that time isn't really about a number, but it's when a person starts to realize that they are wrestling with adult decisions, making adult decisions. I always kind of recognizing that a lot of the students that attended were either just out of high school or in their first year at university. I would also often say, look, if you're wondering whether or not you're making adult decisions, I'll just note that I met my wife 4 months after arriving at university my first year. And that helped people realize that even choosing the university you're going to is going to significantly impact your life. And as a result, the payoff on this class was at the end of the 2-week summer school, we would give students an opportunity to take Holy Supper. And it was always a very nice, usually outside in the evening, candlelit service. And nobody was under any pressure. If you wanted to come forward and take it, we actually didn't do it in front of everybody. It was actually off to the side. So you would have teachers and some of the house parents come forward and take it. And you would have a good number of the older students come forward and take Holy Supper, many of them for their first one. It was a really, really powerful experience. to be able to administer Holy Supper to somebody for their first time. It wasn't uncommon to have somebody um, just shaking, um, and a few people cried. So yeah, it really a profound experience. The class though that I taught I had an encounter that really is what this talk came out of. The class, and it was actually, I think it was multiple class periods where I discussed this, but the class looked at the establishment of the Holy Supper, its connection with the Passover feast. It looked at the spiritual correspondence of the wine and the bread. And we talked about what's happening inside of us on the spiritual level when we do take the Holy Supper. Um, and then this one passage came up, or comes up in the class. And this is from True Christianity, number 719. The Lord is present and opens heaven to those who approach the Holy Supper worthily. He is also present with those who approach it unworthily, but he does not open heaven to them. And I always paused on that approach worthily. And I would ask students what they thought Swedenborg meant by approach worthily. And of course, many unsurprisingly would say, well, I'm worthy when I'm good. And I'd field, a number of answers to the question, but then I'd kind of direct them to, whoa, Swedenborg isn't saying you're worthy when you take the Holy Supper, or you're not worthy when you take the Holy. He's saying when you approach it worthily, because we're all worthy. And of course, that's when one young woman challenges me, and I'll make up a name here. It wasn't her name. She said, no, 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 no. Rachel says, I'm not worthy when I do this and when I do that and when I do that. And I said, no, yeah, you are. You are worthy. And she said, no, 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 but look, what if I do this and what if I do that? That I'm not worthy. And I said, I, I had to come over and say, no, listen, you are always worthy of receiving love from the Lord. Now, you might not want to accept it. You might, in fact, do things that are going to keep that from flowing into you, the Lord's love. But you're always worthy of receiving it. I love this message. Swedenborg's message in the Holy Supper is about how we approach the Holy Supper. He says we come forward worthily to take the Holy Supper when we have faith in the Lord and goodwill towards the neighbor. That is, when we have been regenerated. He also says that when we come forward worthily to take the Holy Supper, we are in the Lord and the Lord is in us. And it is therefore through the Holy Supper that we enter into a partnership with the Lord. It was one of the best moments that I've ever had teaching young people, is to get them to walk out of that room with the thought, wow, I am always worthy of love from the Lord. So since then, I've taught the course a number of other times. But I also spend a lot of time. I love Holy Supper. Holy Supper is, again, I love Holy Supper. Um, I love administering Holy Supper. I don't get to take it. I don't have it. I don't get to have it administered to me very often. But when I have an opportunity to do that, I jump at it. I love it. It's just, I don't, there are a few times I feel closer to the Lord than that. Um, but reflecting on it, praying on the Holy Supper, a couple of things come to mind. One, and on this whole idea of worthiness. Um, One is the Lord does say, why do you call me good? Uh, Only God is truly good. And when I think of that, and I think of it in terms of the Holy Supper and this whole idea of worthy, I then also think of the passage from Revelation. The Lion of the tribe of Judah, the heir to David's throne, has won the victory. He is worthy to open the scroll and its seven seals. Um, I, I, that's not the kind of worthy I am. That's not the kind of worthy. In fact, all of the worthiness comes from the Lord. And I was reviewing the various times that Swedenborg uses the word worthy or touches on worthiness, and and the number of passages, and there aren't a lot, but they seem to fall into one of two categories. One is how closely worthiness is tied to humility. And the second is that only the Lord is worthy. And we are only worthy to the extent that we are conjoined with him. So I've got a couple of passages that I'll read here, and I'll try and finish that up in the next, just a couple of minutes, because I'd love to be able to have a discussion about it. The first one here, this is, I can actually, oh, David, can I put something up on a screen?
I think you can. I've probably got to give you permission, so you should have a share button now down the bottom.
Okay, let's see. I don't want to share that window, but I would like to share this window. No, not that window. Sorry about that. Let's see. I want to share this window. Yes. Yeah.
Anything could happen, folks. Anything could happen.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
So,
There you are.
I have no idea what that looks like to you. Okay, good. Yeah, I did only get that window. Secrets of Heaven 2273.2. The struggles we do win bring with them the belief that everyone else is more deserving or worthy than we are, and that we have more of hell than heaven about us. These are the realizations that come to us in our trials. If we come into thoughts contrary to them after our inward challenges, then it's an indication we didn't conquer. Oh, that whole idea of the necessity of humility is the necessity of humility in worthiness is just fantastic. It's like as soon as you're proud of what you've done, you've lost the game. Yeah, great lesson there. There's the next one touches on similarly. Talk with. Oh, yeah. Okay. This is a pretty good one. Is this sharing this 4801?
No, I think
No.
you've probably got to unshare the one that you've got
Got it.
and then do another share.
Window. Okay, good. Then let me figure out how to do that. Stop screen sharing. Okay, good. Now I'll start screen sharing again. Yeah. Okay. You know what? I'm gonna. Nobody wants to hear me learn about computers, so I'm gonna just go to the last one on my list here because this is the everything's in the Lord. Apocalypse explained 196. So far as anyone receives from the Lord, they are worthy. But so far as they receive from themselves, that is, from what is their own, they are not worthy. Nothing else constitutes spiritual life for a person but the knowledge of truth and good from the Word applied to life. And they are applied to life when a person holds them as the laws of their life. For in doing so, they look to the Lord in everything. And with such individuals, the Lord is present, granting intelligence, wisdom, and an affection for these truths, along with a delight in them. So those two elements, one is humility, and I encourage people to go ahead and read Swedenborg's description of how we actually approach the Holy Supper worthily. That wasn't the message of the lesson here. But the important role that humility plays in that approach to the Lord, and the recognition, which is tied to humility, is that we are actually not worthy ourselves, but the worthiness we have is from the Lord, and is to the extent that we are in the Lord and the Lord is in us. But boy, just take this message away. We are all always worthy of receiving love from the Lord.
Thanks, Howard. Look, it reminds me of, so I teach English, you probably know, and I was tutoring this afternoon, and young Chinese, almost a young man now, he's reading through this novel and throwing words at me that he doesn't recognize. And one of them was arrogance today. Talked about, and so I was trying to describe to him what arrogance is. And, just talking about the idea that you are so sure about your own opinions and attitudes and understanding that you're not prepared to learn anything. You can't take in anything new. And that's the opposite, isn't it, of this humility that you're talking about? It's, the humility is the being prepared to admit you're wrong, to admit you don't understand everything, and being prepared to learn. That's the kind of the way that I look at it. Would you agree, or is anything else you'd add to that?
No, I always think about it in terms of what's happening in our social media world. Nobody thinks before they type anymore. They don't give two thoughts. And it's in those thoughts, that thinking before you type, where I think the Lord is working. If we read something and, oh my goodness, I can't believe they just said that, boom, 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 that's not the Lord working in us. That is the self working in us.
And hit send straight away too, because it's, I guess in the way I think, it's one thing to type a message in, but it's really useful to stop before you hit that send button and say, and actually, read it for spelling mistakes for one thing, but then also just read it for, what's the tone that's coming across? What's the attitude that you're showing people by what you're typing? Is it kind? Is it useful? All these sorts of things. And, I really love that, there are some email programs that now that have an unsend. So, if you send it in haste, you've got I don't know what it is, 10 or 15 seconds to say, oh no, hang on, and I think that's just really useful to sort of have that built-in unsend,
Yeah. Oh, the built-in unsend is much better.
It is, because it saves a lot of grief.
Yeah, I don't know if I told you this, David, but the gentleman who hired me, the owner of the insurance agency where I spent my career, hired me, and for the first year or so, he mentored me, and this is going back a few years. This was actually before email, and letter that I had to write on behalf of the company he wanted to read before it went out.
Okay.
And one day he called me into his office to talk about a letter that I had written. And I was actually thanking somebody for something that they had done for us. And
Okay.
he said, now in this case, Howard, you're thanking them. But if you ever are writing a letter to somebody and you think there's any chance that you're either being overly generous with your praise or overly critical,
Yeah.
leave it on your desk and read it the next morning.
Good advice. Really good advice.
That was brilliant. That was brilliant. And it was easy to do then because obviously you had to actually step up from your desk and put it in an envelope and take it to the mailbox. It's so much easier just to hit the send button, but people should be thinking about what they're doing before they hit send, because that's where the Lord's working. When you are thinking, that's where the Lord is doing his best work.
I think of it very much in the same way as I think of road rage. You know, I remember for some reason, I can't remember where we were living at the time, but there was a period of time where road rage seemed to be the thing in the news. You know, everybody was talking about road rage and what a scourge it was. And then we got email, and email and social media kind of took on that same role. And I don't know that we fixed the road rage either, but
No,
just the idea of strapping yourself in a metal box and hurtling down the highway, you seemed like indestructible, and it was almost as though what you did and what you said had no consequences on yourself. And this email, social media really ramps that up in a way, because you are so much more isolated from people. So to have that skill, I was going to ask you, so your boss, did you ever do that? Did you ever write the letter and leave it on your desk a couple of times? No, you didn't?
No, I never did. The conversation with him was enough to get me to reread letters when I didn't feel comfortable with them and rework them. And I will admit to this. I will proudly admit to this. I have been, in the last couple of months, I have started using ChatGPT when I was concerned that my tone in an email might not have been appropriate. And and I have found it to be actually quite useful for that. I'm not asking it to write, like I write the thing.
Sure.
And then I say, hey, I'm sending this to, my mechanic who did a terrible job of my car, right? Or something like that. Would you make any suggestions? And the suggestions are actually quite good.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It still fascinates me. I remember sitting in my office. Actually, I can remember very vividly sitting in my office, in my insurance office, and reading. This would probably been in the late 90s, maybe the very early 2000s, and reading trade magazines that had articles about the dangers of email communication, and the way a veil of anonymity comes down over a person and causes them to speak in a way that they would never speak to a person face to face. And how that lesson has been lost on so many people, I don't understand.
Yeah. Thank you. Look, I'm going to mention to anybody watching and also anybody here face to face, if they've got any questions, good opportunity to fire up your keyboards and keep it friendly, of course. But if you've got any questions for Howard, then please let me know. And Neville, you got anything you want to throw in?
I was a little bit interested going right back to the early part of your discussion, with David. When you found the new church, and became pretty much fully involved in the community, Were you able to still maintain friendships with people you had been friends with before? I know you mentioned your sister who was perhaps a little bit resistant to it all, but and do you have any sort of situations where it's sort of those friendships started to fall apart, or maybe it didn't worry you? But
No.
Mm.
I probably don't surround myself with the kinds of people who would do that.
Mm.
And I have a pretty diverse friend group. I will say that living abroad for the last 13 years, that's hard on friendships. It's not hard on friendships. It's hard on us just because we miss our friends and we miss our family. But no, I never. I mean, people. The biggest thing is, at least in the Philadelphia area, where you have one of the largest Swedenborgian communities in the world, if not the largest Swedenborgian community in the world. That community has a history, long past, but a history of isolation and not being particularly welcome. We never experienced that personally, but that probably is partially because I just don't really notice when people tell me they don't want me around.
I asked that because I've had a couple of experiences during my life where we got very well. Apparently, sort of good friendships have started as a family, but then when there's been some mention of which church you go to or something like that, and you explain what it is, then it seems to be a sort of a wedge put into that friend. And,
no, my general, I mean, here nobody really knows who we are as a church, and there's so few people outside of the church that we interact with that are actually church themselves. It's not an issue. Back where I raised my family, I had a lot of interaction with a lot of different people across faith because most of my insurance clients were private schools, and most of the private schools in the Philadelphia area were run by religious orders. So I dealt with people across all kinds of faith. And if I experienced anything that was unique to, oh my goodness, you're a Swedenborgian, it was curiosity. Oh, how is that different? Is that part of the Catholic Church? Is that a Protestant church? Is that, tell me, how is it? And that's the most common question is, well, how is this different than any other, church, Christian church? And that's a great conversation I like to, engage with people in.
Yeah.
So I just go back to your YouTube channel and your social media work. Are you finding? Do you get any animosity online? Are people curious? What's your experience there?
Yeah, so I'll get animosity, particularly when I promote something.
Yeah.
And I have gotten, there's some people out there that think I'm leading people to hell, and they don't put the letter on their desk and wait till the next day to push send. They tell me.
It seems not.
And the funny thing is, what they don't realize is the more they comment, the more people see it. I think that was probably worth, the negative comments I got was worth more than the money I spent to promote the video, and got me more not only more views, but more subscribers, because you know, I was talking about Adam and Eve not being real people and simply representative of the first people with a spiritual conscience.
Mm.
And oh wow, did that trigger some people? But that also wound up going across the computer screen of some people who are like, yeah,
Yeah.
of course they weren't. That's absurd to think that they were. So yeah.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to, I forget if it's next week or the following month. But I've got one that says, don't look for answers in the Bible.
I'll be interested to see how that does, how you go with that. And hopefully you get some good controversy, generated from that one too, and you make some traction with it. That's fabulous. All right, look, I'm noticing the fact that we've gone over an hour, so we might call it a day. It's been great to chat with you, Howard. Thank you for being my guinea pig.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. What I will do is I'll just say to those folk who are watching, if you've got any comments or feedback, just be aware this is very much our first trial doing this sort of thing, and I'm hoping to do more. Next month we have Reverend Jack Dunyan from the UK. He has a radio show on Lomond Radio. He'll be talking with us, and he has his topic to bring as well. But I would very much value your comments and feedback. Do you have any ideas about what you'd like to see us do? Do you have any ideas in terms of the way we should run this? As I say, it's new for us, new territory, and I think an exciting adventure to go on. And so, yeah, please do drop something in the comment. The recording will stay here. Or write to me if you've got my email, or you can find us on Facebook and YouTube and various places. But yeah, again, Howard, thanks very much for coming. I appreciate your time. Yep. And maybe we'll see you again sometime too.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. Neville, nice to see you. And Stockholm, thanks for checking in.
Thank you so much. It's been great. Yeah.
All right. Hang on. I've got to put a message up from Stockholm as well. There we go. There's a Stockholm message. There we go. Fabulous. I'm glad you're going to be back. That's good to see. All right. Thanks so much. Thanks again, Howard. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.